We continue now at the top of Daf Tzayin at Aleph and Meseches Bava Metzia. This is Bava Metzia Daf 16a. On the previous summit, Shmuel asked Rav the following question. Let's say you have a person who sells a piece of property to a lokeach, and the mocher, the one who's selling the property, actually stole the property. It wasn't really his property, and he sold it to the lokeach, so now the nigzal really is going to take it away from the lokeach. But then the mocher goes ahead and actually buys the property from the nigzal. And so the question is he like any other buyer from the nigzal, and now he has the right to take away the property from the lokeach? Or do we say that what he's actually doing is he's upholding the sale? And Rav answered that he's actually upholding the sale, meaning to say when the mocher buys the property from the nigzal, even though he bought it from the nigzal after he stole it and sold it to the lokeach, he really is upholding his sale to the lokeach, and the lokeach is able to keep the property. And the Gemara brought a machlokas amoraim why that is the case. Why do we assume that he bought the property in order to uphold the sale? One opinion is that he doesn't want to be called a gazlan, he doesn't want to be referred to as a thief, and that's why he did this. And the other opinion is that he just wants to be seen as reliable. And it seems to be almost the same answer, almost the same explanation. And so the Gemara said, what's the difference? And the Gemara said, well, one difference could be, let's say you have a situation where the lokeach died. If the lokeach died, as the Gemara continues, hamislei, so he already died, and Rashi explains, hamis lokeach, the lokeach died, umiyacharfenu od, and so therefore no one's going to shame him, no one's going to call him a thief anymore because he's already died. Hilgach lo niskavin lozeh ela lahamida biyado bechayiv. So the idea therefore is, he's really only trying, if the lokeach is still alive, he's trying to uphold the sale. V'lo la'achar mosa, but after his death, once the lokeach dies, he's not trying to uphold the sale. So at that point in time, we would actually say that the gazlan, the mocher, is able to take the property because he essentially bought the property from the nigzal. Uman Damar, and the Amora that said Nicholei delekam behem nuse, that the reason why he's now buying it from the real owner, from the nigzal, is because he wants to be seen as reliable. So bahadei b'nei nami Nicholei delekam behem nuse, with the children, with the sons of the person that he sold it to, meaning the sons of the lokeach, he also wants to be seen as reliable, and so therefore even in that situation, according to that Amora, even in a situation where the lokeach died, he's really doing this in order to uphold the sale. But the Gemara says sof, but still at the end, what kind of difference is that? Karu le b'nei lokeach gazlana. Even if the lokeach dies, the children of the lokeach will call him a gazlan. So both reasons should be equal. If he's trying to avoid being called a gazlan, so that's also true whether the lokeach dies or not. And so the Gemara instead gives a different nafkamina between the two explanations. Elaika beinayu, rather the difference between the two explanations is as follows. To miss gazlan, let's say you have a situation where the gazlan dies. So man damar, according to the one who says Nicholei leinish delolik riyuhu gazlan, that a person doesn't want to be called a gazlan, hamislei, so he's already died. Laman damar Nicholei delekom behem nuse, but according to the one who says that he wants to be seen as trustworthy, as reliable, hachanam here also afagav demis, even though he died, Nicholei delekom behem nuse, he still wants to be seen as reliable. But the Gemara still asks sof, but at the end karu livnei b'nei gazlana. They're not going to refer to him as a gazlan, he's already died, but they're going to refer to his sons as the children, as the sons of a gazlan. So that's not a good nafkamina either. And so the Gemara says, Elika beinayu, rather the difference is, the yahava b'matana, what would be in a situation where he actually gave the property as a gift, meaning to say, the person didn't sell the property, rather what happened was the gazlan actually gave the property as a gift. So man damar nichalei delekam behem nuse, the one who says that he wants to be seen as reliable, matana nami nichalei delekam behem nuse, he wants to be seen as reliable even with regards to a gift. So when he goes ahead and he buys the property from the nigzal, he's trying to make sure that the matana is actually valid, that he's seen as reliable. But man damar nichalei delo nikruyuhu gazlana, but the one who says that he doesn't want to be called a gazlan, so in this situation he's not a thief at all, he actually gave it to the person as a matana, he gave it as a gift. If it gets taken away, that person has no claims against him. Amarle my gazlina minach, he'll always be able to say, what exactly did I steal from you? I gave you a gift. It turns out you didn't get the gift. That's no reason to call me a gazlan. And Rashi explains, the Gemara said there could be a nafkamina, there could be a difference between the two opinions, the mis gazlan in a situation where the gazlan died, meaning la'achar shalokha, after the gazlan bought it from the nigzal, v'habonim boim lahotzim yad halokech, now his children are coming to take it away from the lokeach, because they say that the gazlan bought it. So again, it depends why he bought it. If he bought it in order that he shouldn't be called a gazlan, he already died, he's not going to be called a gazlan. If he bought it because he wants to be reliable, he still wants to be reliable, even in this situation. As the Gemara says, hamisle, he died, v'lo niskavin lahamid memkaro ela b'mechayev shelo yicharfuhu. He only wanted to uphold the sale while he was alive, so they shouldn't shame him. But if he's already died, that's not a concern. Afagav demis nichale, but even though he died nichale meikara, it's good to him from the beginning, from the outset, to leiku behem nusa, that he should be seen as reliable. Afilu lachar misa, even after he dies, he wants to be seen as reliable. But then the Gemara rejected that because it said sof karu livnei b'nei gazlan. Aren't they going to refer to his children as the children of a thief? Nimsa sha'af lachar misa mecharfen. Also, it comes out that even after death, it could be a shame to him. It could be a way of shaming him, and so therefore the Gemara ended up saying the nafkamina is, let's say he didn't actually sell the property, but he gave it as a gift. And the Gemara continues at the two dots. Again, the Gemara previously said that if the Gazlan, who is also the mocher, the person who sold the property to the lokeach, if he goes ahead and buys the property from the nigzal, so he's really doing that to uphold the sale to the lokeach. And so the Gemara now says, Pshita, it's obvious. Zavna ursa v'yava b'matana. Let's say he goes ahead, after he sells it to the first lokeach, he goes ahead and he sells it to somebody else. That's talking about the Gazlan again, the smocher. He sells it to somebody else, or he bequeaths it to one of his children, to one of his sons, or let's say he gives it as a gift to someone. So then he's showing he doesn't really want the property to go to this lokeach. So then we actually say lav l'ukma kame lokeach kaboy. So if he goes ahead and tries to buy it from the nigzal, we don't assume that he's trying to uphold the sale to that original lokeach, because we see that he's really trying to get the property to someone else. Similarly, nafla le b'Yerusha, let's say the property actually just comes to him through an inheritance. He doesn't actually do anything to get the property from the nigzal. He ends up inheriting it. So Yerusha memeli. So that's something that just happens automatically. An inheritance happens automatically. V'lav iu katarach abasra. He's not really pursuing it in that situation. And so again, in that situation, we don't say that he's doing it to uphold the sale to the lokayach. Gavi ihu b'chovo. Now let's say he collects the property from the nigzal because the nigzal is indebted to him. So then it depends on the circumstances. We have to see. So if the person, the nigzal, has other property he could have collected from, and he said, I want this particular property, so then we say, the reason why he's pursuing this particular property is because he does want to uphold the sale that he made to the lokayach. But if that's not the case, meaning to say, if that's not the situation, and really this person has no other land, so zuzehu de boyafrui, he just wanted to be paid money for the debt that he was owed, meaning to say he's just getting this land because he's owed money by the nigzal. It has nothing to do with the fact that he's trying to uphold the sale that he made to the lokayach. Now let's say it's given to him as a gift, meaning to say the nigzal then goes ahead and gives the property to the gazlan, who is also the mocher. He gives it to him as a gift. So what would be in that situation? So that's a machlokas amuroim. Pligi bar Ravacha v'Ravina, that's a machlokas amuroim between Ravacha and Ravina. Chad amar matana k'Yerusha. One says a gift is the same as an inheritance. To hamamela, it's something that happens automatically, and so therefore in such a situation he's not actually pursuing the property, so it's not being done in order to uphold the sale to the lokayach. But one says, the other opinion says matana kamecher, that a gift is actually the same as a sale. It's as if he actually bought it from the nigzal. And why is a gift like a sale? Because if not for the fact that he would have taken the bother to try to do something to appease this person, lo have a yoav le matana, he would not have given him a gift. And lohachi tarach va'artzi kameh, and that's the reason why he took the bother to try to appease this nigzal, because he wants to continue to be reliable. Therefore, he's trying to get this property as a gift in order to uphold the sale that he made to the lokayach. And Rashi explains, Zavna Orsa means kodem shalokach min habaylim. If before he bought it from the original owners, from the nigzal, chazur machar leishachar, he went ahead and he sold the property to somebody else, to a second person. Levad min harishon, besides for the first person he already sold it to. Ahurisha lechem mibanav, or he bequeathed it to one of his sons. Yahava b'mataner, he gave it away as a gift. V'achakach lokchahai, and then he goes ahead and he buys it from the nigzal. Vada igli daite, so in that case it's revealed that what he's really thinking is the lav l'ukme kame lokeach rishon boy. He's not trying to uphold the original sale to the first lokeach. He doesn't care that he should be considered reliable, because he's already sold it to a second person. Let's say again the gazlan gets it as a Yerusha. He doesn't go ahead and buy it from the nigzal, but he just inherits it. Meaning originally he stole it, and he actually stole it from somebody who he actually would have inherited it from, and then that person actually died, so he did inherit from that person. So again, in in that situation, we would say it happens memela, as Rashi explains, Yerusha memela hava, Yerusha is something that happens automatically. You can't say that he's doing all of this in order to be considered reliable, because he never even pursued this property. The name of Goli Daite Denichale Deleko, that you're going to say, oh, it's clear from what he's doing that he wants to be reliable. Therefore, he's just like any other person who inherits, and he's actually able to claim it from the person he sold it to, from the lokeach. And v'nosin mos lokeach, of course, he'll have to give money, he'll have to compensate the lokeach, but he'll still be able to get the property. And then the Gemara said, Gavya b'chovo, let's say he collects it from the nigzal, because the nigzal was indebted to him, meaning la'achar shagazla, meaning after he stole the property, umachalo, and then he sold it, uvalo etzel nigzal, he comes to the nigzal, v'yamarlon, he says, hagbali b'chovi karka shagazaltich, he says, I want you to give, because there's the debt that you owe me money, I want you to give me this karka, which I stole from you, I want you to actually give me that karka. So then we said it depends whether there's any other karka that the nigzal has. He is le'ara achri, see if the nigzal has other karka, if he has other land, the nigzal has other land, sheyachol ligvos chovo mimena, that he could have collected the debt from that other land. V'yamar le, but he says to him, bazusha gazalti, specifically the property which I stole from you, ani chafetz, that's the land that I want. So then you see it's clear, hatarach habasra, clearly he's pursuing that property. V'amrin lo'uk makami lokeach boy, and we say that the reason he's doing this is because he wants to uphold the sale that he made to the lokeach. And then finally the Gemara said, Yahave nehili b'matana nigzal legazlan. Let's say the nigzal gave the gazlan the property as a gift, so then already it's a machlokas amoraim. The machlokas is that the same as a sale? Because do we just assume that the gazlan must have done something to appease the nigzal, that's why the nigzal is giving the gift, and therefore it's just like a sale? Or we don't say that, we say that a matana is not considered to be like a gift, it's something that just happens, it's like a Yerusha, it's like an inheritance, and it doesn't show that he's pursuing to try to uphold the sale, it doesn't show that he's pursuing the property. And the Gemara continues, now until when, for how long do we say that if he's trying to buy it from the nigzal, that we say he's doing it in order that he should be considered reliable? And Rashi explains, until when is he buying it? Do we say that he buys it from the original owner? That we say that the reason why he bought it is because he wants to be seen as reliable in terms of what he sold. How long does that last for? And for that we have a machlokas amoraim. Rav Huna says, at shas hamada bedin, it's until they actually go to court. Rashi says at shas hamada bedin means at shitrafua min halokeach ve'amideu bedin, meaning they go and collect it from the person who bought it, because again the person who bought it from the seller, he actually bought property that didn't belong to the seller, so it's going to go back to the nigzal. So at that point in time, it's until that point in time. Avol misha amad b'risho, but if he continued to maintain his wickedness at shas hamada bedin all the way until the time that they're actually in court, gali adaite delo mehemenu, then he's already showing that he's not trustworthy. And if he purchases it after that point in time, if he buys it after that point in time, there already we don't assume that he's doing it in order to uphold the sale that he made to the lokeach. And the Gemara continues, Chia Barav says that until there's a document of authorization that the buyer gets to collect money from the gazlan, from the person who sold him the stolen property. Rashi explains that it means until Bezin is mechayiv him to pay the lokeach ma'os of the money, the amad b'mordo, all the way until that point in time, he's still standing in his rebellion, he's acting improperly. And they write out a document which they give to the buyer that he's allowed to get property from the gazlan, wherever that property is found, he could take that property. That actually is 90 days after they go to court, like we say in the last parak of Bava Kama. And the Gemara continues with a third answer. Papa says that the mischol and yome achrazta, until the days of announcing begin. And Rashi explains that the mischol and yome de achrazta means la'achar shemotza zeh karka mishal gazlan. This individual finds that the gazlan does have property. Ubal lebezin, he comes to court, vein machrizin, and they announce. They begin to announce. Shekol misha rotza liknos karka yavav yigachana. Anybody who wants to go and buy this karka, this land, can come along and buy it. The idea is they're evaluating how much is this karka that the gazlan has. How much is that karka worth, so they can pay back the lokeach. Kedamrinan be'erchen, like we say in erchen, shum ha'yisomim shloshim yom, we say the evaluation for the yisomim is 30 days. Again, so the idea is you're doing essentially essentially an evaluation of the Gazlan's property to pay back the Lokeach. It's until that point in time that we say he's trying to uphold the sale, but after that we say that the Gazlan is no longer trying to uphold the sale. And the Gemara continues, Maskif lo Rami Bar Chama. Rami Bar Chama asks the following question, Michdi, let us see, Hai Lokeach b'mai kani. This Lokeach in this case, let's say again a Gazlan sells property to the Lokeach, and then the Gazlan goes ahead and actually buys the property from the Nigzal, so Rav said that's a way of upholding that original sale that he made to the Lokeach. And so the Gemara is asking, how does the Lokeach even acquire Lahayara? How does he acquire this land? B'hai Shtara, he's acquiring with the shtar of the sale that again the Gazlan made to him. But Hai Shtara chas b'bi'almu, but this shtar, this document is a mere shard, it's nothing, it's worthless, because at the time of the sale, it never belonged to the Gazlan. The property didn't belong to the Gazlan, so what's the shtar worth? So how does the Lokeach actually acquire this land anyway? And the Gemara says, Amar le Rava said to him, Tehebe ma'amino. The idea over here is that he trusted him, Ba'hu anah, because with that pleasure, with that benefit that he derived, the Loka Amar le midi, that he said nothing to him, meaning the Lokeach, he said nothing to the Gazlan, he relied on the Gazlan. Because Samech Allah Tarachu Ma'isile, he relied on the Gazlan to take the bother to go ahead and bring him this land, meaning essentially what happened was the Gazlan sold his property to the Lokeach, and the Lokeach, he's relying on this Gazlan, even though the Gazlan really stole the property, the Lokeach is relying on the Gazlan to somehow get him the property. So through that hana that he gets from that, Gomer u'makni, he actually is maknit him the property. It's through that benefit that this Lokeach is trusting him. That's why the Gazlan gives over this property when he actually purchases it from the Nigzal. He gives this property over to the Lokeach. And Rashi explains, Tehei had Rav, it should be this statement of Rav, meaning this idea of Rav, that when the Gazlan goes ahead and buys the property from the Nigzal, that's a way of upholding the sale to the Lokeach, that's specifically b'ma'amino, that's specifically when the Lokeach relies on the Gazlan, Sha'amar lo, the Lokeach actually says to the Gazlan, he says to him, Ani somech alecha shetitnani biyadi, I'm relying on you that you're going to deliver this property to my hands, and with that hana that he's relying on him, Gomer u'makni, so the Gazlan actually is makne, kishallah when he buys it from the original Bailam, he's makne to the Lokeach. And the Gemara continues, Mesiv Rav Sheshes. Rav Sheshes asks the following question. This is from a Brisa. Mashi'iresh me Abba, what I inherit from my father, Mocher Loch, that I'm going to sell to you. He has not inherited yet. He's saying in the future when I inherit it from my father, then I'm going to sell it to you. Mashatalim Mitsudasi Mocher Loch, that which I will get in my nets. He's going fishing. He's catching fish. He says what I'm going to get, that is going to be sold to you. So Lo Amar Klum, in these cases, he's saying nothing. That's not considered to be a good kinyan. However, the Brisa says, Mashi'irish min Abba Hayom, that which I inherit from father today, Mocher Loch, that's going to be sold to you. Or Mashatalim Mitsudasi Hayom, or that which my nets are going to bring in it today, Mocher Loch, that's going to be sold to you, Dvar of Kayomin. So then what he says is in fact acceptable, that's going to be an effective kinyan. And Rashi explains, Mitsudasi shel chayos v'ofos v'shel dagam. Again, we're talking about traps. It could be by wild animals or birds or fish. So devar of kayom. And then it said if you say hayom, then it is effective. And Rashi points out, the kamon parach, later on the Gemara will ask, Maishna reisha v'chula, what's the difference between the first part of the brisa and the second part of the brisa? Why is it effective when you say hayom? And the Gemara continues, Amar Rami Bar Chama. Rami Bar Chama says, Hagavra, this is a great individual who is asking the question. V'hatiyuftan, in fact, this is a refutation of Rav's opinion earlier. And Rashi explains, Hagavra v'hatiyufta, this is a great person, and this is indeed a refutation. Harei Adam Gadol v'chamo teshuvasu, he's a great person, and just like he's a great person, so too, he's asked a good question to Katani, because what does it say in this brisa? It says, Lo Amar Klum, it says again that he says, what I inherit, let's say from my father, I'm selling that to you, that's not effective. And therefore we're effectively saying that at the point in time when he does in fact inherit from his father, Lo Kana Lokeach, so the Lokeach is not going to acquire, it's not going to be considered a good sale. Kevon Dahi since at that moment when he was saying, I'm selling it, it's not yet his, the property of his father didn't yet come to him. And the point over here is we don't say what Rav said before. We don't say, what did the first person sell to the second? Any merits that he eventually gets. In other words, Rav seemed to say earlier that if the Gazlan goes ahead, let's say a person steals a piece of property, sells it to Lokeach, and then later the Gazlan goes ahead and actually buys that piece of property from the Nigzal, so it is going to be effective. We say whatever he essentially bought, he's given to the second person. When he sold the property, which he had stolen to the Lokeach, he was giving the Lokeach any zuchus that he would eventually get. And so eventually, when he actually goes ahead, when the Gazlan actually goes ahead and buys the property, it actually goes to the Lokeach. And over here we're saying it's not a good sale. That's why it seems to be a refutation of Rav. And the Gemara continues on my Rava says, Gavra kachazina. I do see a great person over here. However, it's yufta lo kachazina, but I don't see any refutation from this brisa because they're entirely different cases. Hacha samcha daita. Over here, the person is really relying on what is going to happen. V'hacha lo samcha daita. And over here, in the second case, there is no real reliance by the lokeach. Rashi explains, lo samcha daite means as follows. The lokeach over here is not really certain that he's actually going to get the property in the case where, let's say, the seller person says, whatever I inherit from my father, that I'm going to sell to you. The lokeach has no certainty about that. Because he's always saying to himself, whoever says this person will inherit anything from his father. Maybe the father's going to sell all of his property while he's still alive, and so therefore, if the lokeach isn't really relying on the kinyan, that's why it's not effective. Now, that's entirely different than in the situation of the gazlan who sells it to the lokeach. There, the lokeach actually is certain, so to speak, that the gazlan is going to pursue getting the property from the nigzal. And the Gemara continues and elaborates, Hacha samcha daite. Over here again, the lokech is relying on it, that the gazlan is going to go ahead and he's going to take the bother to actually bring him the property, in order that he's not called a gazlan, so that he won't be called a thief. But over here, lo samcha daite, over here the lokech is not really relying on anything. He has no idea whether the son actually will inherit from his father, or in the case of the person trapping the animals, he has no idea whether he will get any animals. And the Gemara continues, Shalchu lakame de Rabbi Abba bar Zavda. They sent this before Rabbi Abba bar Zavda. Amar Lahu, he said to them, Zu ein tzricha lifnim. This doesn't need to be brought inside. Simple explanation, it does not need to be brought into the base medrash. We'll see Rashi in a moment. Amar Rav, and Rava said, no, Zu tzricha lifnim v'lifnei lifnim. This needs to be brought inside and more inside. Hacha samcha daite. Over here, again, making the same distinction between the Brisa and Rav. Over here, the person is actually relying, in the case of Rav, he's relying on the gazlan to get him the property. But over here in the Brisa, lo samcha daite, the lokeach is not relying on this individual. He's not relying on the fact that he'll actually get the property. And Rashi explains, Shalchu al-Hatiyufta de Rav Sheshes, the Osev ad Rav. So they sent this refutation of Rav Sheshes that he asked on Rav, and the response was, Ein tzricha lifnim, you don't need to bring it inside, which Rashi explains to me, Ein tzricha kadei letarza lachnisa lefnei b'nei hayeshiva she'ein bohen yodei lefarka. You don't need to bother bringing it in front of the Talmidim of the yeshiva. They won't know how to answer it. Rashi gives an alternative explanation, Uteshuvas ha'gaonim portion lignai. The gaonim, they say that they actually explain this in the negative way, to leka kushya ma'alya, that it's not a good question. Al talu alagav, don't bring it in because it's not a good question. In any case, the Gemara goes on to say zu tzricha lifnim v'lifnei lifnim, and the idea being again that there is a distinction between this case and the case of Rav. And the Gemara continues, Have uvda b'pumbedisa. There was a case like this in Pumbedisa. Rashi explains, Have uvda b'pumbedisa shadanu din kerav, meaning they followed the psak of Rav. V'yosvinu mehamas nisin v'yamar Rav Yosef, and they asked the exact same question. And Rav Yosef said, that's what the Gemara goes on to say. V'yosef, they asked the same question as above. Amar l'hu Rav Yosef. Rav Yosef said to them the same response. Zu ein tzricha lifnim. This we don't need to bring inside. V'yamar le Abai tzricha lifnim v'lifnei lifnim. And Abai said, no, you need to bring it inside. You really need to examine the difference between the cases. Hacha samcha daite. Over here again, the lokech relies on it. Hacha lo samcha daite. But over here, the lokech does not rely on it. And the Gemara now asks the question that Rashi alluded to before, Umayshna Reisha, Umayshna Seifa. What's the difference between the beginning of the Bryce and the end of the Bryce? At the beginning of the Bryce, we said the kinyan is not effective, but suddenly if you say the word Hayom, then it is effective. Why is that different? And the Gemara says, Amar Rabbi Yochanan says, Seifa Masha'irish Me'aba Hayom. In the Seifa, the end of the Bryce, the case is what I inherit from father today, that I'm going to sell to you. Mishum Kavod Aviv. The reason that's effective is really just out of respect for the person's father. Mashatala Mitsudasi Hayom, in the case of the Bryce, which said that which I bring in my nets today. And Rashi explains, Mishum Kavod Aviv, it's out of respect to the father. That means as follows. Kashaya Aviv Goses, we're talking about a situation where his father is on his deathbed, the father's going to die. V'tzarach mos l'kvuraso. And so money is necessary to bury the father, and for the shrouds of the burial. Umuzar l'kavod Aviv shelo l'shosa b'vizayin. So they're already out of respect of his father. He has to make sure that his father does not stay in disgrace, so to speak. He has to make sure that his father gets a proper burial. So in that situation, when he says, that which I inherit from my father today, it's sold to you, I need these funds for the sake of my father, so then already the Rabbanan say that that is considered a good kinyan because it's for the benefit of the kavod of his father. We will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Tazayin Amid Beis.